How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another First Descendant video. Now today we're going to be covering an underdog on the scene, and that is going to be Esiemo. You hardly ever see Esiemos running around, and I feel like he's very undervalued. Now that could be for good reason. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. I'll let you guys see for yourself in this early game beginner's guide and in the end game guide when I show you a build that I'm working on that I'm not going to spoil just yet, but it may or may not be very powerful. Anyways, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into his abilities. Now I have two different loadouts for Esiemo, one being a mob clearing loadout, which is what you're looking at now, and then a boss, which will be the next tab that we'll go over after I'm done going over the mobbing loadout. Both of these loadouts do use a Transcendent module. However, I will give you guys some options if you do not have the Transcendent module, but I do highly recommend the Transcendent module for both of these. So if you want to grind it and get it, that's again very highly recommended. So first we're going to start with Esiemo's passive, and then we're going to go to the ability number 1. So for Esiemo's passive, you drop a bomb on the ground when your shield is completely depleted. Very simple, nothing much to it, straight to the point. The cooldown on it can be reduced. It's a base 30 seconds. I have mine at 18.7 for the ad clearing loadout. The damage of this scales off of your skill power times a 1617.3% modifier, and the range is 4 meters base but can be modified by range mods, and it brings it to 7.7 in my build. The max expandable range is 200%, meaning you can only get to 8 meters of range no matter how many mods you stack on this for range. So one skill expansion will do the job. Now we're going to move on to Esiemo's first ability, Time Bomb. Now keep in mind Esiemo is a fire tech fusion descendant, meaning his main attribute is fire, of course, and his secondaries are fusion and tech. Keep that in mind. So Time Bomb skill description: fires a sticky bomb forward. The sticky bomb attaches to an enemy or terrain on contact. Now there's a couple things I want to note really quickly before we go over the basic info of the ability. One, the range that this travels is very high, and there will be some gameplay in the background showing you guys how far you can actually shoot one of these time bombs. Now it does explode before impacting an enemy or a surface if it's an extremely long range. However, when you shoot this, most of the time it'll keep going until it hits an enemy or a surface. With that also comes the travel time on sticky bombs. So if you are far away and you're using this in a boss encounter, or you're just aiming it at an enemy far away from you, there will be travel time, so you would have to lead the time bomb rather than just shooting it directly. So it's not like a hit scan time bomb, it will have travel time behind it. So keep that in mind when you're shooting these at long range enemies. And lastly, if you leave these time bombs or any of your bombs, which we'll go over later, but if you leave these time bombs on an enemy and do not use your second ability to explode them, they will do decreased damage. And now for the basic info, the maximum stacks is 5. Now this is important to note for later. The stack cooldown is 7.5 seconds, meaning the entire stack will cool down in 7.5 seconds. You'll have all 5 bombs back. The MP cost is 12 per bomb. The burst damage is the skill power times a 407.3% modifier, meaning your base skill power, or whatever your skill power is, even modified, your whole number skill power times 407.3%. The explosive damage range is 5.8 meters on my build, can be increased by 200%, so a 6 meter radius, and we've basically hit the cap at which it can be increased. Now moving on to Esiemo's second ability, and we'll loop back around and go over a couple things later on in the video, and there will be timestamps so you can just skip ahead and skip back if you do want to see the interactions, but there will be the interaction explanations later on in the video. For his second ability, it's Blast. Now this is a fire fusion. It's important to note that even if you apply a fusion modifier or a fusion skill power, any sort of fusion boosting module, it does not increase the damage or anything like that. At least from what I've found, whether that's a glitch or intended, I'm not sure. But no fusion mods do increase the amount of damage you do with this ability in particular. The skill description is detonate the attached bombs. Damage dealt increases the number of attached bombs. So it's essentially like a detonator, which you would use for a bomb, which explains why the fusion mods don't increase the damage. The cooldown on it for me is 6.2 seconds with a cost of 15 MP. The detonate damage increase per bomb is 25%. So this says that every bomb that you have on an enemy attached to them or the ground, it doesn't matter. Basically, any bomb you have out increases your damage by 25% with a max of 5 times, leaving you at a 125% damage increase maximum. Now you come with 8 bombs on Esiemo. You can have 5 of your time bombs and 3 landmines, which we'll get to here in a minute, but only 5 can be stacked with a 25% damage bonus. That doesn't mean you can only put 5 on them at a time. You can get all 8 on them, but you'll only get 125% damage increase. You won't get more for the 8. Now moving on to the third ability, which we have opted to slot in Explosive Propaganda, which is Esiemo's Transcendent mod, one of his. In this state, generates an explosive propaganda. The generated explosive propaganda taunts nearby monsters until destroyed, upon which it explodes and causes great damage to nearby enemies. This is Esiemo dancing, and there will be some gameplay of this. Esiemo dancing around, taunting the enemies. It attracts the enemies at a radius. They go towards it, and then you can either detonate it yourself by using your second ability, which also will detonate all of your mines. Now, I do find it unfortunate that you can't activate your mines without detonating your explosive propaganda. I wish there would be like a hold interaction to detonate your explosive propaganda, because sometimes you want to detonate your mines, but you do not want to detonate your decoy because you could be using it to attract enemies' attention and keep the heat off of you. Now, this does come with only 1 charge as opposed to the 3 you get with the original landmine, and again, we'll go over that here shortly. The cooldown on it is 28 seconds with my mods, 25 MP cost. The HP and defense of your clone is equal to 100% of your HP and your defense. The duration is 8.5 seconds. Taunt range 11.5 meters. The skill power times 1878.8% modifier is the damage it does when the clone explodes. And the max expandable range is 250%. So the base is 4 meters. I have minus 7.7. Again, as I said before a couple times, with just 1 skill expansion, you're able to get almost max range for all of his abilities, which is very useful. Now moving on to Esiemo's 4th ability, this being his highest damaging ability, Arche Explosion. Dashes forward to deal damage and inflict knockback on colliding targets during movement. Interacting with the skill button again or ending movement deals burst damage to nearby enemies. Enemies hit by the explosion lose their buffs. When the skill ends, grants Self Madness. Now, there's a couple interactions that you need to be aware of for this. One of them being, if you activate your 4th ability, you're going to start sprinting forward in a goofy manner. Now, if you press your jump key and activate your ability key, you can belly flop or head dive into an enemy. Now, the reason this is good is because if you jump at the right time and you're aimed in the correct position, also note that it's very, very slow to turn your character. You can maneuver your character perfectly with a high enough sensitivity. However, for somebody like me on the sensitivity I play, which is 6 at 800 DPI, turning this is an absolute nightmare. Anyways, if you jump, you can head dive into the enemy and then belly flop onto the ground. Now, this will give you that small boost to damage because you'll get the burst from impacting the enemy plus the burst from ending the ability, which is where you get all of your damage from. It's actually quite a significant amount of damage. You'll see the damage numbers of it here shortly, or maybe I'll have some in the background so you can see the actual damage it does. It's not too bad. This is a dangerous animation and it does make it hard to find places to use it, but this can be useful. And we're going to get to why it can be useful here in a minute in the basic info. So the cooldown's 49.8 seconds with my mods, 65 MP cost, so quite expensive. You get a 120% speed increase while sprinting. You get skill power times 85.8% damage. This is just the damage of running into the enemy, so it's not that high. But the burst damage is your skill power times 7,414.4%. So this is where you get that big burst of damage. The explosion damage range is at 11.5 meters for my setup with a max expendable range of 12, so 200%. Now Madness, the duration is 10.6 seconds. You get a 25% firearm attack increase, a 30% movement speed increase, and a 30% defense decrease. Now this is definitely worth getting that defense decrease because 25% firearm attack plus the movement speed is very, very nice to have. And you're able to dodge a lot of mechanics and damage with this extra movement speed, especially in boss fights or when you have a bunch of ads surrounding you. So this Madness buff is very, very nice. Now there is another Transcendent mod that I can go over really quickly, and that's Creative Explosion. In my testing, this is awful. It says that it consumes all of your available bombs to inflict great damage on nearby enemies. The more bombs available, the greater the damage inflicted. However, I have used this ability with 5 time bombs and 3 landmines in my inventory, so like I had them available to use. After using this ability, it consumed all of them, but the damage did not increase. Now I could be doing this completely wrong or not understanding what it's saying, but this is just bad. Not only that, but when you slot this in, which I cannot do, we'll go to test here. When you slot this in, you're going to get a change to your fourth ability. So no longer getting Madness, instead Narcissism, which gives you 20% cooldown and the movement speed stays, but you don't get that firearm attack. You keep the same defense and movement speed changes, but instead of getting firearm attack, you get cooldown, which is much less valuable than the firearm attack that you get from Madness. Now moving back to our original build. So now that we've been over the abilities and I've briefly explained them to you, I'm going to go into the range and I'm going to give a more in-depth description of how these abilities synergize together and how you'd want to use them. So with Explosive Propaganda, I already have an ad spawned up here. It won't work in the range, but as you can see, I'm going to throw a clone of myself and he's going to do these silly dances. And then after his health bar, as you can see up top, is depleted, it'll explode and do damage. Now, you do not have to wait for the health bar to explode and do damage. You can actually activate it by using your second ability, the Detonate. But as I stated earlier, this also detonates your bombs. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. The thing I think that is bad is if I had my clone out. Let's say I had my clone out here, and I have these two bombs on him. Right? I want to activate my bombs, but I don't want my clone to go away. However, I don't have a choice. The clone detonates when I use my detonate button, regardless of how long it's been out. I could instantly throw it, and then if I detonate a bomb, it's gone. So I think that there should be a hold interaction, as I said, maybe to detonate the clone rather than detonating it with the bombs. Or maybe this is their attempt to balance him. Maybe they think his kit is too strong, which so far I would disagree. I don't think it's too strong at all. Another interaction is, so even though it says you have to have these attached, it could be misleading for some. You don't have to have it attached to the enemy. Attached to the ground also does damage and gives you the increased damage. So every bomb attached gives you a 25% damage increase. So one bomb is going to do 77,708. Two bombs is going to increase to 93,000. And this goes on and on again until you're up to 5. So 3 bombs, 108,000. I know it's hard to see because everything's all clumped together. Now for this last one, we're going to attach all 5 bombs. And if you look at Detonate, it tells you how many bombs you have underneath the ability, which is my second ability, that's Detonate. It'll tell you how many bombs are out at the moment, which will show you how much you're going to get in damage increase. And at 5, it's going to glow, letting you know that all of them, this is the max you can get. Activate it, 139,000 damage. Now, an important interaction to note with these abilities is that my propaganda, my decoy, does get the same boost to damage as the time bomb's doing. What I mean is, remember that 25% you get per bomb, it does go up on the explosive propaganda. So if I throw my clone out and I attach 5 bombs, I will get that damage boost to the explosive propaganda. Or any one bomb would give me a 25%, 25, 50, 70, right? On and on. But you do get that same boost when your clone explodes. I'm assuming that's why they bound the explosion for the clone to the time bomb, because they were expecting you to tie it all together and just do a big burst of damage. And it can be good, however, bosses are not taunted by propaganda, it is only adds. So I'll show you that really quickly. Remember, it did around 300k base, but if I attach 2 bombs, throw propaganda, you can see there 486. And again, this goes on and on up to 5 stacks. So we can do a little 5 stack for you real quick so we can see the damage. It may get cluttered up, it may be hard to see, so we'll have to be quick with it. Throw this here. So 624,000 was what we got out of the explosive propaganda after stacking the 5 bombs. Another important thing to note on Esiemo is that his bombs have a range when you stick them to the ground, as you guys saw earlier. So this will be the range in which the explosive will reach. If they're inside this radius, they will take damage. Now, the damage does not split. So I'm going to go change the adds to multiple, and I'm going to show you that the damage will be applied to all of the adds in the area, which makes this very strong for AoE builds. So if I throw these bombs all around, that one went to nowhere, and activate them, every single ad takes the same amount of damage, and it is not a reduced damage. So if I come over here and activate this bomb just on the edge for these two, and standing right here probably be best. You see they both took 77k. So the damage does not split no matter how many enemies are in the radius, which is very good because without this, his kit would be honestly very underwhelming. Another little quick thing to note is that the sticky bombs do have some sort of traction to them. Now, if you shoot it over here, you see how it kind of looped over to him. So you don't have to be exactly precise, but you do need to be pretty close. And you activate, and as you see, they all take the damage. Now, for a little explanation of Esiemo's fourth ability. So when you activate the ability, you're going to stomp, you're going to do an animation, and then you're going to sprint towards your target. Now, make sure that you're aiming where you want to go, because as I said, if you're on a low sensitivity, it's very hard to control. I can give you guys a little demo of what it looks like, me trying to control it. And this is me swiping my mouse across my mouse pad on the sensitivity I currently have. Now I'm able to do it, but it's not the best movement. Now, as you saw there, that was 1.39 million damage, and this is on a level 100 enemy. I'm glowing here because I now have the madness buff, and you can see on the left side of my screen, those are the two indicators that you do have the madness buff, which gives you that 25% attack, movement speed, and the damage or defense decrease, excuse me. Now, I want to show you guys the interaction I was talking about, where jumping, headbutting, and slamming with your stomach, the belly flop, where this comes in handy. So I'm going to run at this ad, I'm going to jump, headbutt into him, and then slam. And the way you slam is by activating your ability again. I'm going to jump, headbutt, slam. So I still get the 1.4 million, but I also get the burst damage from impacting the enemy. It's just a little extra boost to damage, nothing crazy. This helps with boss hitboxes. If you jump into the boss's like knee and hit him, it's better. The AoE on this ability is really high. So if I run past the boss, it may be hard to see, but you might be able to catch it, that I will still do damage to him because it throws out like an AoE in all directions. You see the hit marker for hitting him, right? And he's staggered. The damage does not decrease based off of the range, and the damage is also not split for this ability either. So if you had 100 ads, obviously I have never tested that, but if you had a large group of ads and you're doing 1.6 mil, 1.5 mil, whatever, you're gonna do that to every single ad in the area. This can be a little finicky. You have to get used to the range at which you can activate it. If you activate this ability too early, you're gonna miss it. You're not gonna hit the target. It is quite a nuisance to use. The range is decent, as you can see. It's not horrible, but I feel like they could definitely make this ability better later in the game. And now that we've gone over the ability descriptions, I've shown you the interactions, and if there's any questions you have whatsoever, feel free to go to the comments section, or you may be able to check if I'm live over on twitch.tv/EEFANN. I did stream some of this testing live. I do stream almost every day whenever I can. And if you want to ask me live questions or just see what I'm up to, you can catch me over there. But now that we've gone over all these abilities, and if there is any questions, let me know. I will be in the comment section answering everything that you have to ask. We're going to move on to the Descendant modules. Now, as we just went over, I'm going to slot in explosive propaganda. Obviously, you want to upgrade this as much as you possibly can because it creates more space for you. However, we are going to be using another Transcendent mod, so keep that in mind. You're going to need the Kuiper to upgrade that as well. And we slot in long distance maneuvering. The choice is yours. You could go for mid-air maneuvering. You could go for, let's see. You could go for mid-air maneuvering. You could go for a punch like shock punch or dual claws for AoE. The choice is yours, whatever you like the best. Then we slot in nimble fingers. And the reason is because the cooldown is very nice on Esiemo. The more you can use his abilities, the more damage you're going to get out of his abilities. Now, he is a hybrid DPS, meaning he uses ability damage mixed with weapon damage. Hence why he has the madness buff, which gives him firearm attack. He isn't just spamming pure abilities. He is definitely a hybrid. The nimble fingers is nice, obviously, because you get cooldowns on all your abilities. But along with that, you get your passive, which does drop that little bomb. Like if an ad hits you like Kingfisher in a boss fight, or an ad just sneaks up on you and hits you, you're going to drop this bomb and it will kill them. It is a fairly strong bomb, so it's very nice to have this. Next, we're going to slot in increased HP. Now, this is almost a guaranteed on every single Descendant. Because HP is so strong, HP and defense, because they scale so high and they're so nice to have, it is almost a guaranteed slot for any build on any Descendant. Now, this may change in the future, but as for now, increased HP is almost a must-have. Along with that, Esiemo is one of the higher HP Descendants base, so this scales very nicely for him. Then we have Focus on Fire. So Focus on Fire gives us the 77.2% fire skill power. This is not a modifier. You do not want modifiers because modifiers change the numbers at which your base skill or your skill power, while boosted, is multiplied by. So as an example here, because we have 7,414.4% for the burst damage, adding an extra even 70, 50, right, adding a small percentage is going to be very minimal as opposed to upping our base skill power, which will give us more damage to multiply into. So for certain Descendants, you focus on skill power raw rather than the modifiers or multipliers in which you multiply your base or modded skill power. Hopefully that makes sense. And then we get the nice skill cooldown of 6.1. Again, cooldown is nice. It's very good on SMO. You want to have your abilities up as much as you can, and that passive on replay is very nice as well. Then we have an unleveled focus on tech. Now, depending on your capacity, is going to depend on what you can do for these mods. Now, this is a beginner's guide, an early game guide to SMO. The end game guide will be coming out next. I will be focusing on, like I said, that build. I don't want to spoil just yet, but I have some ideas. And it's going to obviously have the crystallization catalysts and maybe an energy activator as well. So if you have that, after we go over these last couple mods, I can recommend some mods that you slot in. But for the beginner or this early game build, I'm going to leave it here because this is what most people will be at, considering energy activators are extremely expensive and crystallization catalysts are also not the cheapest thing to craft. So you would leave this focus on tech here and you would upgrade it one time if you can. I already have a tech that's upgraded, so I don't want to waste the Kuiper on this one upgrade, but you would upgrade this by one. And these mods can change. Now, if you wanted to ask me what you would change for space, you could decrease a couple in increased HP. Don't go too low because obviously, like I said, the HP is so good. Nimble Fingers, you want to leave max. Focus Fire, you want to leave max. And skill expansion also, I would recommend leaving on max for the AoE build, because not only does that increase the range of your taunt, but it also makes your bomb explosions have a larger radius, which means more ad clear, which means more explosions, etc., etc. It's very nice to have this increased range on the mob loadout. And along with the little 17% or whatever you increase it to based on your space, you get the cooldown again, which is very nice. And moving on to our last one, skill expansion, just a 92.3% increase to your range. Just nice to have, especially on a character like Esiemo that focuses mainly on AoE explosions. Now, to move on to my recommendations, I'll only give a few because I don't want to spend too long here. But one of the great ones that I actually don't have yet, which I do need to get, is MP Collector. Now, this would be great on an SMO build because you're going to be killing a lot of enemies with the mobbing build, and this just gives you a chance to restore your MP. More MP means more explosions, more abilities. It's just overall better to have the increase in MP. So if you could slot this, I would go for this next. It's also not too expensive to slot in, which is very nice. Now we move back to our mods that we do own. And one that's always nice, and this is in the bossing build, is Spear and Shield. Now I recommend this more for bossing because you get the defense and the skill power. That's what we're going for, is that defense with the skill power. For mobs, the defense and the skill power may not matter as much, but if you're finding survivability issues, this is a very great mod to slot in, because you get the 78.1% defense, which is super great. Plus you get a raw 8.1% to skill power, which is the best form of skill power, meaning it's stronger than the fire skill power, electric skill power, etc., etc. The raw base skill power is the strongest version of skill power. So this would be a great one to slot in for survivability issues that you're having. And for the last one, if you're having problems with MP and you don't have MP Collector, or maybe MP Collector just isn't enough for you, you could go for the blue mod, Strong Mentality, which just gives you a reduction to your skill cost. This would be desperate type of thing because I don't think you should have MP problems if you slot an MP Collector. But hey, if you're really spamming and you are having trouble with MP, this will help you. Now that's going to pretty much cover everything you need to know about the mobbing loadout. And again, if you have any questions, the comment section is always open, and I do try to answer every single comment I get. So feel free to go down there to recommend some tweaks, tell me what you did with the build, or ask some questions that you're not quite sure of. And we're going to move on to the boss loadout. Now, starting with the bossing loadout, we're first going to go over the Transcendent mod. Now, this Transcendent module is going to be preference based, I would say. The damage is still very good, but let's go over it first and explain what happens. So you're going to modify the detonator ability, and you're going to turn it into Cluster Bomb. Now, Cluster Bomb states that detonating an attached bomb creates additional explosives at the detonated location, essentially meaning that when you activate any bombs that you have, it's going to drop 2 mini explosives. So if you had 8 bombs on, you're going to drop 16 mini explosives that are going to detonate for their own set of damage, which is around 7,000, not too high, pretty low. And then it's going to apply only 1 tick of burn. Even if you drop 16 little bombs, only 1 tick of burn is gonna be added onto the enemy. Now it ticks for 5 ticks, or based on your duration, it ticks however many seconds you have in duration, because it's a 1 second interval of damage ticks, but you only get a max stack of 1. You also lose, if we go over here to cluster bomb, you lose the 25% increase per bomb. So this is one of those cases where you have to kind of pick your poison. If you really like the way that it drops these cluster bombs, and you like that you get the burn tick, and you seem to be enjoying this more, then you can definitely opt for this and it won't be a crazy amount of damage loss. However, for the most damage, and even though I do like this Transcendent mod, for the most damage you would take off cluster bomb, and I'm going to explain to you why you would take off cluster bomb. We're going to remove this and save it. We're going to go back to our landmine. Now this has changed because we removed explosive propaganda. This now states that places a guided landmine. Once placed, the guided landmine flies to an enemy within its detection range and attaches to it. If there are obstacles in its path, it attaches to the terrain. However, one thing to note very quickly is that if you do use cluster bomb, it does change your detonator to a tech-based mod, which does receive boosts from modifiers in tech power. So just keep that in mind really quickly. Let's get back to what we were doing. Sorry about that. Now back to landmine. Places a guided landmine. Once placed, the guided landmine flies to an enemy within its detection range and attaches to it. If there are obstacles in its path, it attaches to the terrain. Now what this means is if you place a landmine underneath an enemy but in detection range, and there's a hill in front of you, the landmine will attach to the hill and not the enemy. I do not like this. I think this is horrible. This should be changed. It makes it very clunky and annoying to use, especially with all the terrain changes. However, if you're using this on a boss like I'm suggesting here, it won't be much of an issue because almost 90% of the arena is flat. Maybe not 90%, but you get what I'm saying. Majority of where you're fighting is flat, so this should have no problem. Now for the basic info, we have a maximum stack of 3, so you get 3 landmines, a stack cooldown of 8.7 seconds with an MP cost of 18 per use. So 18 times 3, that's how much it costs to use all 3 landmines, and then 8.7 seconds is the amount of time that it would take to cool down the entire stack of 3. The guided landmine detection range is a 10 meter radius base with a detection duration of 40 seconds base. Skill power times a 1061.9% modifier. Radius 3 meter explosive damage range at base with a max expendable range of 200%, leaving that at a 6 meter max radius if you use range mods, which we will not be using range mods. The reason we opt out of range mods here is because this is more of a precise, focused detonation type of build. We're going to be going for the boss directly, and if you're not attaching it directly to the boss, you're going to be attaching it hopefully very, very close to his feet. We're not going for an AoE explosion in this one. We're going for more of, like I said, a precise detonated explosion. So that's why we don't opt for any range mods to increase that AoE range. Now, a couple of important interactions to note with the landmine when it's not explosive propaganda is that you do get the damage increase, as I stated earlier, from the 125 maximum that you can get if you're not using cluster bomb. Remember, so if you opt out of this and you go for just no skill module, which gives you increased capacity, and I'll go over what I would recommend as a mod if you don't use cluster bomb. But if you opt out of cluster bomb and you don't use the Transcendent mod, you get the chance for a 125% increase. This does apply to the landmines. They are set at a higher damage value. So the landmines are stronger than the time bombs. So you may see different numbers when you activate this and be wondering what's going on. The time bombs are just at a lower value. So you can get a max stack of 5. Let's just do 1 landmine and you'll see it should do around 200k damage. 213,000 damage. That's great. Now I'm going to stack 2 landmines. And if you look at the bottom of our detonator, you see we have that 2, which is a 50% increase. Activate them and we're at 256,000. Now I'm going to throw 1 landmine, which you knew, actually let's do 2 because you guys just saw 256k. 2 landmines and 1 time bomb. Activate. So you see how the damage numbers were different? It increases each one separately. So that's just something that you should be aware of so you're not confused with the damage, wondering why the damage numbers are different or off. And this goes for the max stack of 5. So if you wanted to go for, let's say you wanted to get all 8 on there. Now you're not going to be able to see these damage numbers because they're all clumped together, but it's still going to give you that 125% increase to all of the bombs that meet that requirement. So I'm going to show you exactly what that would look like right now. So you have to go 5 of these first, and you have to be very fast because you're on a timer. These will start to explode. You have to activate your detonator right after. As I said, you can't see the damage numbers. It's impossible. But just know that it does increase 125% to that 5 stack maximum. Anything after that is receiving base damage. Now back to the bossing loadout. What I would recommend you slot in if you opt out of Cluster Bomb, it's going to be Time Distribution. Now this gives you a cooldown decrease and a max HP increase of 52.4%. As I said, for Descendant like Esiemo, skill cooldown is very valuable to him, and max HP never hurts, especially with a HP pool as high as Esiemo's, so this will increase your survivability by a decent amount. 52.4% is a good amount of health. Now some other options that you can opt into is, as I said before, if you want MP Collector, which I do not have actually, I'd have to back out and show you. So we'll back out here, and I'll show you MP Collector one more time. If you did want to opt into MP Collector, this is not bad either. Just keep in mind there's not as many ads to kill on the boss, so you may not be able to proc this as much as possible. This is more valuable when you're doing mobs, but could be valuable for a boss if you're having MP issues. Now back to our Descendant modules. As I said before as well, Strong Mentality, basically the same recommendations. If you're having MP issues, you know, slot this in over Time Distribution. If survivability is not an issue, but MP is, you can slot in this. And it's a cheaper mod, so these can both be maxed out and still fit into the build perfectly, leaving you at exactly 60 out of 60, Time Distribution and Strong Mentality. But for my number one recommendation to slot in first, if you're not having problems with survivability and you're not having problems with MP, is going to be Improved Driveshaft. Now, what you would have to do in order to fit this in is you'd have to drop 2 points, and I would recommend dropping them in Spear and Shield. So you'd remove Time Distribution. This is what your mods would look like. As you can see, you have 10, you need 12. Or go for a lower upgraded Improved Driveshaft, which I would not do. You would be better off opting to drop 2 points in a Spear and Shield. Obviously, if this is already upgraded, you cannot do that. But drop the 2 points in a Spear and Shield if you don't have it upgraded yet. Slot in Improved Driveshaft, and this is just going to add on to the increased weapon attack that you get from your Madness state. But you're going to get this at a 15% chance for 5 seconds. So 5 seconds of 21.8, that's alone, not even including the buff you get from Madness. But you're going to get that increased firearm attack for 5 seconds at a 15% chance. And it's very beneficial to roll a lot, especially when you're dodging mechanics. You're going to find yourself rolling very often. So this is actually a very great mod for weapon-based Descendants. And as I said earlier, he's a hybrid Descendant, so he uses abilities along with weapons. So this is a very great mod to slot in, and this would be my go-to mod. Unfortunately, my Spear and Shield's already leveled up. I don't have the space, but this is what I would slot in before any of the others. But again, as I said, if you're having MP problems, you go with the Strong Mentality or MP Collector. And if you're having problems with your health surviving, then opt for Time Distribution for the better cooldown and the increased HP. Now, there is one more Transcendent mod that I have not got to test out for Esiemo, and that is going to be the one where you roll and drop a landmine. Now, I don't know if this is very good. As I said, I haven't got to test it yet. This could be pretty good. I don't know if this replaces his passive, and I don't know the cooldown on this. So I do want to try to get this as my next Transcendent mod, which I will try to do, and this may play into the build for the endgame one that's going to come out soon. So keep your eyes out for that, and if anybody knows how good this is, let me know in the comments, because this sounds like it could be pretty strong. Now, moving on from that, this is going to be your bossing setup. As I said, keep in mind the recommendations I made, cater it towards yourself, but the mods you want to keep in, always increased HP, nimble fingers, focus on fire. And if you want to opt for upgrading your focus on tech and dropping out Time Distribution, this is also a great mod to upgrade to get a little more extra damage. It all just depends on what you're struggling with in the content that you're currently at. And one suggestion I would make to new players, because this is a beginner guide, or even advanced players, polygenic antibody is absolutely useless. So do not upgrade a polygenic antibody, and do not slot this into any build at this current moment. Right now, it is completely useless. This is just a horrible mod. So just make sure you avoid that, and you're not wasting your Kuiper on that, even though it's not too expensive. This is a waste of slots, a waste of Kuiper, a waste of a mod, honestly. And now moving on from that, we're going to get to the weapons. So as you can see here, I have a shotgun slotted, and that is to meet my optimization condition for my reactor, which is very important. We'll get to that later. But my DPS weapon is the Tamer, and if you watch my solo Esiemo Dead Bride, you'll see that I use this quite often. And then we have the Assassin's Edge. Now, this is not modded for me yet. However, I have loved hand cannons since this game came out. This was also a beast in the beta, and I'm only assuming that this is going to be incredible in the base game as well. So I would highly recommend getting yourself one of these with a good roll and modding this out, because I'm almost positive this thing's DPS is going to be absolutely crazy. I still have some leveling up to do for it and some building to do for it, but I have this in here as a backup. It's great for killing the little ads that annoy you, like again the roly-polies or the kingfishers. And for the Tamer mods, won't go over it too much, but this is what I run. Must have mods for almost every gun: rifling reinforcement, action and reaction, better insight. Those are always really good. And fire rate up, also pretty useful on almost every single gun. Keep that in mind if you're looking for mods to upgrade. I'll have a video on that coming out later. And then, as I said, just the shotgun, not even modded, I don't think, just to slot in for the reactor bonus. Speaking of reactors, we'll get to that now. So I have a burning mixture reactor, which gives me a fire skill power boost ratio with a fusion skill power boost ratio. Now, I haven't come to a full conclusion whether I like fusion boost ratio or tech boost ratio better. However, I'm going to stand and say that I think I like tech skill power boost ratio over fusion skill power boost ratio at this moment. I still need to do a little more testing, and again, that will be in the end game guide. I'll have my final answer for you. But for right now, I think I'm opting towards the tech skill power boost. However, this reactor has a fusion skill power boost ratio of 0.081, which translates to an 8.1% skill power fusion skill power boost ratio. Because I meet the optimization conditions, I get 140% from the skill power, which I run a machine gun, the Tamer. So basically, this is the best reactor that I have right now, minus the chill skill power boost ratio, which obviously is useless to me. But if I was going for the perfect reactor, and as I said, I haven't come to a full conclusion yet, but you could also go for a burning mechanics reactor, which would be fire tech skill power boost ratio. And for the substats, you want anything that boosts your skill power ratio for tech or fusion, and you want either skill cooldown reduction or you want a skill cost reduction. For the external components, I opted for the Annihilation set, which gives me 5.7% skill duration. This is not the best set for him, this is just the best external components I have. And for external components, I most of the time go for defense, and then I add in a little HP here and there. For the substats, I go for the resistances. So as you can see, I have a fire resistance, a chill resistance. This one has no resistance, but it should be elec, and then a toxin resistance on the Polar Knight. For the bravery sensor, I have a defense of 4683, I have a defense of 3512 on the Annihilation, a max HP of 646 with a 3575 defense, which is why I opted for this one rather than an elec resistance, because I have an elec resistance one that I'll slot in if I go up against something like the Executioner, if dying is a problem, which usually it's not. So I opt in for the 3575 extra defense. And then I have a max HP at 646 with a toxin resistance for my Polar Knight processor. There'll be more info to come in a more conclusive video on reactors and external components in the end game guide. It'll be more extensive, and I'll do a lot more research into what exactly I want for external components, but I still need some more time testing and playing into in-game content to fully come to a conclusion of what's the best in the slot for these. So yeah, make sure you guys are looking out for the end-game guide that'll be coming out shortly after this one. And now guys, that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I'm going to open up my info page here so you guys can see all of my stats and everything, so you guys can match it up to yours and make sure you have everything built correctly. I wanted to thank you guys so much for the support in my videos recently. I love all of you guys, and I appreciate you guys very much. And thank you to all who stop by the stream and say what's up and hang out with me every now and again. It's very appreciated. Also, if there's any questions, cares, or concerns, feel free to use the comment section or check if I'm live over on twitch.tv/EEFANN. You can ask me questions there live, or come tell me how shit my build is if you think it's bad, etc., etc. The choice is yours. So thank you guys all again very much, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.